The scripture this morning is from Luke chapter 12, verses 13 through 15, and Hebrews chapter 13, verses 5 and 6. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who sent me to be a judge or an arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. Keep your lives free from the love of money, and be content with what you have, for he has said, 'I will never leave you or forsake you.' So we can say with confidence, 'The Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can anyone do to me?'" The word of God for the people of God.
Thank you, Jenny. Well, good morning, my friends. My name is Jason Mankey. I'm one of the pastors here at People's Church, and excited to be able to share and chat with you this morning. A couple of notes, or a quick reminder that in your programs we have our green sheets, which are our growth sheets, and in them there are questions that you can use to think about, reflect on the message afterwards. And we did something fancy this week. We have fill in the blanks. So if you like that kind of thing, during the message I'm going to go over 4 things, and in order to know what those are for the sheet, you can fill those in there if you'd like. There's also some household prayers that you can use as well. So I don't know how many of you know this, but I lived in North Carolina for 3 years. That's where I went to seminary. I won't name the name of the seminary because every time I do, I get booed, just because of one little basketball game. But after they got 20 inches of snow overnight, they sent me back. They weren't used to that type of thing there. But not only snow did they get there, but while I lived there, there were 3 major hurricanes and 2 minor hurricanes, which was new for this Midwest boy going, lots of water is coming. And the worst hurricane that happened while I lived there, you might have remember hearing of Hurricane Floyd. In fact, Hurricane Floyd came just a couple weeks after Hurricane Dennis. And so everything was already soaked, and then Hurricane Floyd happened. And the governor would later say that Floyd was the worst disaster to hit North Carolina in modern times. And the state secretary of Health and Human Services said, "Nothing since the Civil War has been as destructive to families here." And in total, Hurricane Floyd claimed 52 lives and damaged, destroyed, or left 80,000 homes uninhabitable. In the days leading up to Hurricane Floyd, an evacuation was called for. It was the largest peacetime evacuation in our nation's history. 3 million people were evacuated. Now, I believe Hurricane Irma in Florida that happened in 2017 actually surpassed that as the largest evacuation. And in that time, people boarded up their houses and had to, in a really short time, figure out what they wanted to take with them with limited space and just enough time to grab what they could and put it in their car. In the end, people were able to take with them just a few precious possessions. Now, if that were you, can you think what you would take with you out of all of your possessions? Just what you could grab in your arms and take in your car. Some people took family photos. Another person took their special blanket and pillow. What would it be for you? Natural disasters remind us that everything in this world is temporary. That's why Jesus warns us today that one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. And in the face of such disasters, we nod our heads in agreement. And yet our culture is constantly shouting at us that this is not true. We're told over and over again that we'd find fulfillment, that we'd be happier or more satisfied if we could just have this or we could just have that. And so we've got this wrestling match that's constantly going on inside us. While we say that we agree with Jesus, we still find ourselves devoting a great amount of time, talents, and resources toward acquiring more and more stuff. We say that our lives don't consist of the abundance of possessions, but many times we live like they do. Yours truly included. The truth is, everybody struggles with discontentment. We're never really satisfied with anything. And I will say it's important to point out that this is who God created us to be. There's a certain amount of discontentment that God intended us to have, so we wouldn't be fully satisfied with certain things. And therefore we would seek out the one who can truly satisfy us. And that's God. We were meant to yearn God more, to cultivate a deeper prayer life, to pursue justice and holiness, to love others more, to grow in grace and character and wisdom with each passing day. So a certain amount of discontentment with where we are with these things right now, well, it's actually a virtue. It leads us to seek these things at a deeper level. But too often, we become content with how much we love others, with our relationship with God, with our prayer life, and many of the things that could use more attention in our lives. And we find ourselves hopefully discontented with things that we should be content with. Most of us, for example, experience discontentment with our stuff. Our homes, our cars, our televisions, our gadgets, and clothes, and so on. For instance, we buy or build our dream home. And 2 weeks later, we notice that the kitchen just isn't quite right. And the appliances, well, they don't suit our needs like we want. And the carpet that the builder put in, it's just not the quality that we'd prefer. So the moment we move in, we begin thinking of the improvements to this thing that was our dream home that we'd like to make. At one time or another, a lot of folks also find themselves discontented with their jobs. And a lot of people in our culture are constantly searching for a new job that they think will make them happier. Even while they're at work, they're online on Indeed, looking for another job, a better job that's out there somewhere. Perhaps they don't like their boss, or they think that they should be paid more, or they're frustrated with their coworkers. So they believe that the answer is to find something else, expecting what's behind door number 2 to solve all of the problems and make them happy. We're on the search for the perfect parents and the perfect children, spouse, church, friends, and so on. But we so often don't realize that the things or people that we think would make us happy have their own idiosyncrasies that would drive us absolutely nuts after a short period of time. In talking about discontentment, one pastor said, and I quote, "Sometimes I think God must look down on us and feel the way we feel when we give someone we really care for a special gift, and he or she asks for a gift receipt. God must look at us and think, what is it with these people? I give them all of this, and they keep asking for a gift receipt." It's as if we're saying to God, I don't like what you have given me, God, and I want something else. I want to trade it in and get something better. What can we do with discontentment? Well, in the book of Philippians, Paul wrote the secret to his contentment. Paul writes, "Not that I'm referring to being in need, for I have learned to be content with whatever I have. I know what it is to have little, and I know what it is to have plenty. In any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being well fed and of going hungry, of having plenty and of being in need." Like Paul, we need to learn how to be content in whatever circumstance we may find ourselves. So today I want to introduce the four keys that can help us be content in all circumstances. One of which includes the quote-unquote secret that Paul's talking about in his letter. And that's where the 4 blanks in your growth sheets come in if you want to follow along there. So first and foremost, by the way, if you know me, you've heard me say this before. Let me say that in order to find contentment, if you're in debt, you need to get out of debt as quickly as possible, as if your entire peace of mind and sanity and happiness depends on it. Because I tell you what, it does. Like I said last week, so many of us have gotten ourselves into debt searching for happiness in stuff and things, and so we've mortgaged our future only to find out that stuff hasn't brought us contentment, and to find ourselves buried in credit card debt, and to have car loans we can't afford, and home loans we can't afford, and we end up being what they call house poor or car poor. I've been there. So have many other people. Debt robs our lives of peace and joy. I can assure you that you won't find contentment until you are out of debt. It's a weight bringing you down. So if you want some simple steps to get out of debt, I'd recommend taking Financial Peace University, which, hey, there's Stephanie. Stephanie Haugen is our teacher. Yay, Stephanie! And we offer it in both September and January. Now, if you say, I don't want to wait that long, good for you. Then how many of you know how to use Google? Really? Okay. I mean, we don't have to worry about how to find answers to things anymore. We just Google it. So this is what you Google. Google baby step 1 and 2 video. And you'll run into a couple called the Money Couple. And they're not quite as charismatic as Dave Ramsey, but they do a great job of explaining the steps of how to create an emergency fund so you can stop using credit, an initial emergency fund. And then the first baby step 2 is how to get out of debt as if your life depends on it. Secondly, there is one question that we need to ask ourselves if we're striving for contentment. And that is, how long will this make me happy? So often we buy something thinking it will make us happy, only to find out that the happiness lasts as long as it takes for us to open the box. Now, if you're taking notes on this, next to that sentence on your sheet, write the word simplicity. Simplicity. Simplicity is important to cultivating contentment. Simplicity says less is more, that we don't need as much clutter in our lives. In fact, the more we pursue, the more stressed out we become. Simplicity asks the question, do I really need this? Have I completely used what I have before buying new? And are there changes that I can make that would allow me to simplify my life in all areas? Our consuming habits have serious consequences that affect not only our personal and national debt, but also our world. Consider, for example, our consumption of renewable and non-renewable resources. Every year, Americans consume 1.2 billion trees to support our needs for packaging, paper, napkins, and bags. We use 2.5 billion or 2.5 million plastic bottles every hour. Most of these for water. We represent only 5% of the global population, yet we produce 40% of the world's garbage, an average of 1,609 pounds of garbage per person per year. This is not only wasteful, friends, it's unsustainable. If the rate of our consumption continues to increase each year as it has for some time, it will soon outpace the growth of our population. We cannot continue to this trend and think that everything will just be okay. Eventually, we will exceed the rate at which resources can be renewed. We simply cannot keep going faster and faster, consuming more and more without devastating consequences, personally, nationally, and globally. As people of faith who know the true source of our satisfaction, we must agree that sometimes less is more. We must be willing to simplify. Third, we need to develop a grateful heart. Gratitude is essential if we are to be content. The Apostle Paul said that we are to give thanks in all circumstances. A grateful heart recognizes that all of life is a gift. Contentment comes when we spend time giving thanks for what we have rather than thinking about what's missing or what's wrong in our lives. We can focus on the disappointments, or we can give thanks for the blessings that we have. One day a man came in to see me, and he told me that he and his wife one night had an argument. We don't know what that's like, do we? He was so angry that he walked out the door and headed down the street. And he walked for about a half a mile until he calmed down. Then he began to pray as he walked, listing all of the things that his wife did that frustrated him and irritated him. After a while, his prayer took a different turn. And then he began to thank God for the traits in his wife that had led to his frustration. Thank you that she is strong-willed, that she has a fiery personality, and she calls me to be better than I am, he prayed. Before long, he was thanking God for the things that he had always loved about her. Thank you for her touch, for her smile, for her eyes, for her kiss, for her heart, for her embrace, for her beauty. And by the time he walked back into his house, his heart had changed from anger to gratitude. He truly felt grateful for the precious gift that God had given him in his wife. Sometimes feelings of love come after we talk about love and after we express love. We say, I love you, and do loving things, and eventually we have loving feelings. I mean, we think that the feeling should come first, but oftentimes it works the other way around. Likewise, when we begin to be grateful and express gratitude to God, we find that over time our hearts are changed and we are grateful for what we have. Then we are able to be content. Fourthly and lastly, we need to answer the question, where does your soul find true satisfaction? The world answers this question by telling us that we find satisfaction in ease and luxury and comfort and money. Scripture, however, answers this question quite differently. From Genesis to Revelation, it tells us that we find satisfaction in God alone. Psalm 63 reads, O God, you are my God. I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My soul is satisfied as with a rich feast, and my mouth praises you with joyful lips when I think of you on my bed and meditate on you in the watches of the night. The Apostle Paul named the source of his soul's satisfaction in his letter to the Philippians when he wrote, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. In other words, he found that Christ was his source, the one who satisfied his every need and enabled him to be content in all circumstances, whether in a palace or in prison, whether in poverty or in wealth. That was Paul's secret to contentment. Paul had discovered the deep love of God. He knew that his life belonged to God and that he was a part of God's plan for the world. All of his deepest needs were satisfied in his relationship with God through Jesus Christ. Deep in our hearts, we too desire to be connected with God. We need to believe that our lives have meaning. We need to know that there is grace and mercy when we've absolutely blown it. We need to know that there is hope in the darkest of circumstances. We need to know that we are loved unconditionally by someone who knows us better than we know ourselves. And we need to be able to share this love in meaningful relationships with others. Contentment is found in our relationship with God and in our relationship with others. So, in the end, we have to decide which tent we want to live in. Discontentment or contentment.